In today's video, we're going to make the vegan sweet treat that I eat every day. It's delicious, it's healthy, it's fairly low calorie, and Gimlet can't have any because it's not good for him. But we could talk about the codependency of cats that just want to ride around on people's shoulders all day. So the idea of this recipe is to replace your daily protein bar or chocolate bar with something a bit more healthy. Now, could this recipe be unhealthy? Yes, it could. If you eat 20 a day, or you replace all the ingredients I show you with cheap and nasty ingredients, then yes, of course, it could be unhealthy. So this is something you eat one or two of a day at most, because it is high in fat and high in sugar, but it's also high in things that are good for you. So we're going to start with some paper cases. So the size you want is the muffin ones are too big, and the ones for sweets or candies are too small. These ones are what we in the UK call fairy cakes. In other words, those little small cakes. And we're going to start off with some Medjool dates. And I've got these ones here that I bought from my local supermarket. Now, it's really important that you get the Medjool dates. And some of these ingredients you might think, well, these are fairly pricey ingredients, Michelle. I could get, cheaper ones, but not only will it not taste as nice, but even though they might seem expensive, if you are replacing, store-bought protein or chocolate bars, you're going to find that this is much cheaper. It just can seem a bit pricey when you make it all in one go. So you're going to start by taking the stone out, and any of these little bits, some of them have them on the end, and we're just going to open up the date like so. Next, we're going to put some peanut butter inside, and you want to go for a peanut butter that's, just natural ingredients. This one does have some salt in. If your peanut butter does not have some salt in, unless you have a diet which tells you to have low salt, what I would do is, once you've done this stage, what I would do is grind some sea salt on top, just so that you've got that little bit of saltiness. I'm not going to do that because this peanut butter already has some salt in it. We're just trying to make it sort of fairly rounded in shape. Next, I'm going to take a pecan nut. Now, of course, you could use any nuts. You could use walnuts. I actually really prefer pecans to walnuts, certainly for a recipe like this. I find walnuts just have a little bit of sharpness to them, which I actually prefer in more savoury recipes. So you've got your pecan nut here, and we're just going to place it in here, ready to melt our chocolate and pour our chocolate on top. So you might have heard that having 1 square of dark chocolate a day is good for you. That's exactly what we're going to put on each of these 1 square. So I've got this 70% dark chocolate here. Again, you could replace this with cheaper chocolate, but you're just really making the recipe less good. And even if you're not a fan of dark chocolate, I was never a fan of dark chocolate before I went vegan, when dark chocolate really is the only vegan chocolate, certainly in standard brands. But this one is very smooth and creamy. So if you shop around, you will find one that you like. And even if you don't like it, as a chunk of dark chocolate, once it's on these, you'll find the added sweetness of the date, which tastes very much like toffee or caramel, will add to the strength of the chocolate, and it's going to be delicious. I'm going to get on and make the rest of these. This is a 100-gram bar, so we've got 10 squares in here, and we're going to make 10 of these. I'll put all the quantities in the video description. So I've put the peanut butter in the others. One thing to note is that if you have got some nuts that are broken like this, it really doesn't matter. You can do kind of a Frankenstein thing and, patch the pieces together. Trust me, once the chocolate is on, it's going to look fine, and nobody eating them will be able to tell. So it's really important that you get the Medjool dates, as I mentioned before, because they are much softer and stickier than standard dates. The other thing to note is that you can make them without the paper cases. They'll just spread out a little bit more. And the reason I put them in the cases is because you can really ram them together. So I can make, 20 or so on a little baking tray, which is what I would usually use rather than a plate, but you just need a flat surface. And putting them in cases like this will mean that you can fit more on that tray and fit more in the fridge, which is where we're going to put them to cool down once we've melted our chocolate. It also enables you to freeze them. I always freeze these, and you might say, why would you freeze them? Because they're so delicious. I'll eat them all in one day otherwise. And because they have such a low water content, they're going to defrost in just about 45 minutes, at least soft enough for you to eat. Next, I'm going to break up the chocolate. I'm going to melt it in the microwave. I'll explain how to do that and put up a little footage. So the easiest way to break the chocolate is to sort of pretty much do it to some extent within the foil, and then I'm going to just tip it in to this little jug here, and you want the pieces to be, fairly small. Be careful not to get any foil in there. I did that the other day, and metal in microwaves doesn't work well. Now, of course, you don't need to use a microwave. You could use the standard method of melting chocolate, whereby you suspend your chocolate pieces in a bowl above a saucepan of water, which you heat. But since I have a microwave, I'm going to make use of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting the jug in the microwave, depending on how much chocolate you're melting. Start it off 30 seconds to 60 seconds, and then you're going to take it out and stir it, and just keep putting it back in for 10 seconds each time, just until it's melted. So you don't want to overcook it. And in this way, you'll get nice melted chocolate, and then we're going to pour it with a spoon on top of our little treats. So my chocolate is just melted, and what I'm going to do now is just take a spoonful at a time and pour it on top of each one of these. So start out by just putting it roughly along the top. What you're aiming to do is just to cover up all of the peanut butter and the nut. So start by pouring it in the middle of each one and sort of encouraging it down the sides. And what we'll do is we'll do sort of a quick go over like this. And then what you want to do is just look at each one, turn the plate around, see if you can see any areas that haven't been covered by the chocolate. Don't worry about covering all of the dates. That's not important. Just aiming to cover up the nuts. And you can see this is really quick and easy to do. And these are absolutely delicious. You may have people in your family that say, oh, I don't like dates. And I've had people say that to me before. But I can assure you, once you do this to them, they become quite magical. So what I'm doing now is I'm just looking at any that I can see that are not completely covered. I'm just going around and putting a little extra on those. And what I will do off camera is I'll take a spatula and get the rest of this chocolate and put it into my face. I will get covered in chocolate. In fact, it's almost impossible to even eat these once they're set without covering yourself in chocolate. I don't know why, but got to have some happiness in life, haven't we? Other than cats, of course. What we'll do now is we'll take these and I'm just going to place them in my fridge, give them, half an hour or an hour, and they will be set. These have been in my fridge now for about an hour. You can see the shine's gone off them. That means that they're nice and cold. So I'm going to choose one. Oh, I'm going to choose this one. I think this has more chocolate on than the others, and I'm going to put that in my face in a minute. Now, I've not made cooking videos really before here on YouTube. I've always made art videos. And this is the point where I'm supposed to come back on camera and eat this in front of you and make sort of yum yum noises. I'm not going to do that because it makes me uncomfortable, frankly, when other people do that. But these are delicious and I hope that you enjoy them. You might think, well, they look very small to replace a chocolate bar, but trust me, they're very, very chewy. They pack a punch. There's several mouthfuls here and an awful lot of protein in that peanut butter. With the rest of them, I'm going to pack them into this Tupperware box here and I'm going to pop them in my freezer. That will stop them all falling into my face by the end of the day. And when I want to have a break and a cup of coffee, I'll just take one out of the freezer, stick it on the side for an hour or so, and there is my healthy chocolate, chewy, delicious snack. Let me know in the comments if you're going to have a go at making these and what you think of them. Remember to stay kind to yourself, stay kind to other people, and always stay kind to animals. That way you will continue to be just like me, fully approved by cats.